You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast.
People, opportunity, and Africa. Now, the difficulty 10, 15 years ago was the interest. We're spending a lot of time in getting investors and people to be interested in opportunities in Africa. We have a number of brilliant founders starting up companies, and a number of them are already billion-dollar companies. You're seeing a number of professionals using their expertise that they have gathered along the way, to empower these new set of phenomenal entrepreneurs to build companies. For us all to achieve our goals, it's about partnerships and it's about working with people who you believe in.
Stay tuned as we bring you inspiring people who are unlocking Africa's economic potential. You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast with your host, Tessa Adamu.
Welcome to the Unlocking Africa podcast, where we find great people who are doing great things to unlock Africa's economic potential. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Gbite Oduneye, who is a founder and managing partner at Odba. Welcome to the podcast, Gbite. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you so much for having me, Tessa. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. I know we've kind of tried to get this going a few times, but with busy schedules, it's taken a while, but I'm so happy the time has arrived finally. So I've purposely kept my intro short so that you can give us a bit more information, give us a bit more detail about yourself. So please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us who Gbite is.
Thanks again for that. Where do I start? I'm a young man that's very interested in the development of Africa. One that looks at innovation as a way to enable Africa move forward very, very quickly. My background is I've always worked in the financial services sector. Started off as a stockbroker in England, and then moved very quickly to setting up an investment management company. I think this was back about 15, 16 years ago. And the focus back then was the same as the focus has been now. When I left stockbroking, the aim was to promote investments between Africa and Europe and America. Did that for 10, 15 years, met a number of phenomenal people along the way, and experienced a number of things on the African continent, And now I'm pretty much still doing the same thing, just wearing different hats. I do invest, as you mentioned, through Odba. I also do run a few startup companies myself, but the focus and the aim has fundamentally stayed the same. Looking to work with very smart, innovative, and hardworking people to enable them fulfill their dreams. At the same token, looking for the best possible way for the great African continent to develop. At the same time, trying to ensure that we can provide value to shareholders that do trust in us. So in a nutshell, I do wear a number of hats, but the main hat is people, opportunity, and Africa.
I love that. People, opportunity, and Africa. So you mentioned your interest in the development of Africa and also your background in finance. I know you quite specifically with regards to the innovative work that you're doing in investing in African startups. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey with regards to that specific part of your professional career in terms of investing in African startups? How did it begin?
So it started way back when I first set up a boutique investment company called E&O Acquisitions. Now, as I mentioned, what that was for was to, look for investors here in Europe to invest in opportunities in Africa. At the time, very difficult for a small emerging company. But we took it on and we enjoyed it, built up a decent clientele base, an ecosystem. So it's what we've been doing for a while. Now, you then fast forward to 10, 15 years. Now, the difficulty 10, 15 years ago was the interest. We're spending a lot of time in getting investors and people to be interested in opportunities in Africa. 15 years later, that has fundamentally changed in that the amount of money and the interest has changed considerably. Then, to get people, the Africans ourselves, what technology has done is made it easier for us to express our ideas. It's made it easier and cheaper for us to build basic products to test concepts. So what has happened is, like I've said, nothing has changed. It's just the terrain has changed. The terrain has become more friendly to opportunities. It's not as difficult as it used to be to start a company. It's not weird anymore to get foreign investors to invest in a 22 or 25-year-old that does not particularly have the experience, but the person has drive and that innovative mindset. We waited a very long time for that. We have a similar career path. And 10, 15 years ago, that would have been gold. That's all we wanted. That was the terrain we looked for. That was what a number of my colleagues wanted. So when you forward 15 years later and it's actually happening, we have a number of emerging fund managers raising lots of capital. We have a number of brilliant founders starting up companies, and a number of them are already billion-dollar companies, meaning that what we thought was there 15 years ago is now coming to reality, that there is the energy, there is the innovation. What was needed was the belief. And that's what we're seeing now. So what brought me into it, I think it's always been there. The terrain has changed considerably now. So it makes it much easier for me to do what it is I've always done, but just be more effective at doing it, which is investing with my LPs into very brilliant, innovative African minds.
Brilliant. So you touched upon there that you started also as a startup founder yourself. You have some very impressive startups that you've been involved in over the years, and also the difficulty of getting people interested in investing in African startups 15 years ago to seeing the evolution now. So with that in mind, we're seeing almost an evolution of the ecosystem where founders have become funders. What is the importance of that in the African startup space?
Well, it's important in many ways. There's a general saying, whoever finances you controls your destiny, right?
Yes.
Now, as I mentioned very early on, the difficulty always was access to capital and funds. Proving to an investor, be it foreign or domestic, that this idea is workable and scalable. So if you think about it in that aspect, that is still the difficulty. The difficulty is convincing someone about an opportunity, in a terrain that's difficult. So the best people to do it, that they need no convincing, are people that have already actually built companies in that terrain, meaning that they have the experience, they understand what it takes to build companies in that terrain. And obviously, because they've been successful at building companies in that terrain, they've amassed capital. So who better to invest in the terrain? Who better to lead a number of these new innovative companies than the companies that have been successful? So we can see recently Flutterwave is doing a lot of investments. A number of unicorn founders are doing a number of investments because, one, they do have the capital now. They don't need to go out to convince anyone. Two, they have the experience in that they've been there. They understand the terrain. So they're very well placed to guide the new gentlemen and ladies that are coming along to build phenomenal companies. So I expect to see much more of that. I expect to see them, open up family offices and do a lot more. The same, we're seeing a lot of that also in angel investing, right? Where you're seeing a number of professionals using their expertise that they have gathered along the way, to empower these new set of phenomenal entrepreneurs to build companies. It's them using their experience as well as their capital. The already existing founders have made a lot of capital, a lot of money, and they built phenomenal companies. So they provide a perfect blueprint for the new guys coming along to build their company. So we see this trend will continuously increase.
Yes, I agree. Fantastic. You touched upon there in terms of who better to invest in startups than those who have been successful in that terrain. So I believe that everything we do in Africa must have an Afrocentric approach to it. Do you believe that the startup investment approach in Africa differs through the approach outside of Africa?
Like with everything, right? There's similarities and there are differences. We would pick and build on where there are similarities, where there are models and strategies that can be incorporated, right?
Yes.
And the ones that will be unique to Africa, which is what a number of the founders have already built successful companies would be aware of, we will devise our own strategies to deal with the problems of Africa. I mean, the infrastructure in Africa compared to a number of places is very different, but it has not stopped these massive companies being built. Logistics, of course, will be much more difficult in Africa compared to other places. But we've looked at the market and people have been innovative and come up with things to enable them succeed. So there's a lot of things that will bear similarity to the rest of the world. And there will be things that we would come up with that would be exported because we are building things in a terrain that's very, very different from most terrains. So with regards to Africa-centric approach, believe it or not, a number of these technology companies, they're already including Afrocentric approaches to these things. They're building for the domestic market based on the issues and the problems that these markets have. And as we know, in Nigeria, for example, power is a major problem, right? And we don't have a logistics network like you would see in a number of places. And so these phenomenal founders are going around these problems, right? And going around these problems would create innovation that obviously can be exported to other places that it would be handy. So yes, the Afrocentric approach is, it's Africans building this,
Yes.
understanding the terrain and adjusting to the terrain. But if your question is, Tessa, let me try and be a bit troublesome. If your question is,
please be troublesome.
If you are asking if more Africans should be involved, is there a worry that all the capital that's being used to build the terrain is coming from outside? That how African is this African evolution we're talking about? If that's what we're saying, because a number of colleagues have mentioned that, like I said, whoever funds you controls your destiny, and that we will end up where all these phenomenal companies are owned and run by foreigners. Yes. I mean, I suppose my answer to that is this. Do we prefer the way the terrain looks now compared to when it did 15 years ago when no one at all was investing? I believe that the foreign capital that has come in will kickstart, as we've seen, a massive boom in angel investing. I mean, the Angel Academy of Africa do a phenomenal job in bringing people together. We believe this capital that is coming in from outside will wake up the minds of all the sleeping capital that currently exists on the continent. We think it's going to provide the momentum for a number of new emerging fund managers. There are a number of them out there doing phenomenal work that are going around sparking the minds of a number of HNIs in Africa to start investing. Do I have a problem with foreign capital coming in? Of course not. I mean, capital is needed for us to grow, and we have a lot to do. And in the very short space of time, I mean, the effect has been phenomenal. Yes, a lot of the ownership is owned by foreigners, but that, like I said, would be the catalyst to get everybody else to get involved and for us to start build a phenomenal continent. So I'm not particularly worried. I suppose if we have this conversation in another 5 years and the amount of local investors getting involved has not increased considerably, then I would be worried. But I can't see that happening because, like I said, it has been phenomenal so far. So I cannot see it, the run ending. And I believe those that see what is happening would definitely get involved. So we're all excited. We're all excited so far.
It's extremely exciting time. So you've touched on something important there, the mix of foreign and local capital in the investment space, whether it be Nigeria or other African markets. You're the founder of ODBA, which is an early stage venture capital firm.
That's very right.
Can you tell us a bit more with regard to those who aren't very aware of the investment space? What does that mean? What does it involve in terms of the African startup space?
Okay, so a venture capital firm is really a company that goes to invest in early stage ideas, right? So, in our case, we have not yet raised the fund. Later on in the year, we will be looking to raise a 25 million fund, although we have invested extensively across 14 very exciting portfolio companies. What does that mean? Now, obviously, as we've mentioned here, the important thing is, the expertise to be able to judge opportunities and make change. But importantly, it's capital that is required for these things to happen. So what a venture capital firm does is they raise money from their partners, partners to invest in opportunities. So what Odba does is we look at pre-seed and seed, which is very early stages, very early stage idea concepts, and we invest between 100 and 250,000 in pre-seed and seed opportunities. We work alongside with the founders to build their business, build their concept. I mean, we become a member of their team in enabling them to grow to their potential. So what we do is we look for great minds and great opportunities, and we are always very hopeful that they would take us in there to enable us partner to build the kind of continent that we've always dreamt of. You know, you can't do it all, right? There are only a certain amount of hours in a day. So for us all to achieve our goals, it's about partnerships, and it's about working with people who you believe in. People are at the heart of everything we do. You know, we believe founders are the best people to build the future. So what it is we do is that we seek these founders out through our extensive pipeline, and we partner with them. We join their dreams to cook a bigger cake, should I say, or to help them facilitate, because they're the geniuses, to be honest, right? They're the ones with the amazing innovation and the mindset, and they've dreamt up this fantastic future. Our job is to use our expertise and whatever capital to assist them to ensure that their companies become as big as they possibly can. So, we've launched, we were open about a year ago. We're really still in stealth mode, although we've invested in 14 companies, some very exciting ones. I mean, Kuda Bank, for example, was one of our very early investments.
Very exciting.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have invested in the brilliant Babs Ogunde at the seed stage. And they've raised as far as Series B. You know, they're now valued at 500 million in a very short space of time. And these are the reasons why we invest. I mean, the capital is always great, but this story, for example, is the example of Africa. A gentleman that had a phenomenal idea on how he thinks he can change banking, the innovation, the ability and the belief, and he went to work. And he launched this company in 2018. And as of 2022, we're saying this company is worth $500 million. Now that's exciting. That's really exciting. We're saying that this company is arguably, in the top 5 largest banks in Nigeria, and it's only been in existence for about 3.5 years. Now, that is what is possible. That is what capital, hard work, and innovation partnerships can produce. So, and that example, and there are loads of examples, there are loads, but that's one of the ones in our portfolio that we're really excited about, as well as a number of other ones. But we do it because you can see that, you can actually impact change, develop the continent, and at the same time provide a very decent return to your shareholders. So we're still very early stage. Like I said, we're still in stealth mode. We're just about to start our fundraising for our first fund. We have taken on some LPs. We've put about $2 million to work in the last year and a half. And, we invest in fintech, health tech, ed tech. And, we also do look at Web3. We're still looking at what the future would be. But we invest in companies. We go out and we speak to as many limited partners as possible to join us on the investing journey. And we have a fantastic pipeline of partners where we come across opportunities and we take advantage of. So it's a really, really exciting time, Tessa. From my point of view, it's becoming clear, which I don't know when or how it happened.
Yes.
That I'm no longer one of the babies, right? Once upon a time, I was.
Oh, you're making me feel old as well now.
Once upon a time, I was the baby in the room. I was the one that's really excited about Africa and screaming it out to everyone. Now, the more I look in the mirror, the amount of white hairs that keeps growing on my beard, I'm realizing that times are moving on. So it's really exciting to have the opportunity and the privilege to work with a number of these founders that are building my dreams. You know, they're building things I could only sit back 10, 15 years ago and just imagine that, you know, one day a number of men and women will come and they'll think of an idea, they'll put it to practice, people would invest in them, and they will build things that would change the world. I didn't think I'll see it in my lifetime. I know that sounds weird, but I really didn't. I didn't think in my lifetime that a gentleman could set up a company and in 3 years, that company would be worth $500 million or $1 billion or $2 billion. You know, that was the dream. That was what we were hoping to see. But that is happening now. And we're still at the very, very early stages of this, meaning that there's a lot more to come, you know, and a lot more to come. So we're really excited. ODBA really hasn't got going. You would hear a lot more from us in the second half of the year. But so far, so good. I can't complain. We're really, really excited about what we've done so far. And we're very excited about what's to come in the future.
Thank you, Gbite. That's very exciting and great news to hear. You mentioned there that you have 14 exciting companies in your portfolio, companies such as Kuda, and you have, Outschool Africa, who recently secured 1 million pre-seed?
Yes, that's very right. I mean, you know, these are all phenomenal companies run by fantastic entrepreneurs. And there's a pool of this. There's a pool of this in Africa. Young, great minds. They might not look, sound like everybody else, but these are phenomenal individuals. Not just, also there's that difficulty in the amount of women seeking capital. We've also invested in a number, 35% of our portfolio are females. I mean, we've got Gbite Oduneye of Edukoya, Vivian Owaka of MedSaf, you know, doing phenomenal things. We've got Kashmir doing phenomenal things. How do we come across these individuals? Like with everything, right? Like with everything, it's ecosystem, partnerships, you know, and that's what we do. Like I said, that's what I've done for the last 15 years in Africa. Go down, roll up your sleeves, and find those that you think are going to change the world. And the way it is done, in all honesty, because you can't be everywhere at every time, are these partnerships with a number of other VCs, with angel investors, accelerators, incubators, you know, to seek out these brilliant minds, because they're now in very, very high demand. It wasn't a long time ago, they would be the ones, but now we're chasing them, right? Because we know they have the option to decide on whose capital they take for investments. You know, it's changed considerably. There's a lot out there. Every day, I think quite recently, I think it was yesterday, I think it was 24 companies on the Y Combinator.
Yes.
That has increased dramatically. We saw last year the amount of money that was raised in African tech. I think it crossed the 4 billion barrier. In some places, 5 billion, they say. We're expecting this year could hit 10 billion. Meaning that finally, you know, for those of us that have been on the African space for a while, it's no surprise. It fills us with absolute joy and happiness that it's happening. But it's no surprise because we have known forever that there's talent. Like the talent we've always seen in football or the talent we see in entertainment, we've always known that talent was there in business. It was just that the youth haven't been given the opportunity. And now that they have, you know, you've opened up Pandora's box. There's no closing it. There is no closing it. As long as we continue to guide, support our governments and our regulators, you know, because in my opinion, they seem to be the only ones that could put an end to this. But as long as we continue to guide, lobby, I do not see this stopping. Yes, there could be a potential slowdown. Yes, some people feel that these numbers are overvalued. Yes, that is possible. But like with every single last market that has existed under the sun, you would always have corrections. You would always have places where hubris gets out of place and people, you know, chase a number of things. So things like valuation and all that don't bother me. Like I said, I'd rather be here than where we were 10, 15 years ago. And we will continue to learn and change and grow. You know, like I said, the ecosystem is massive. The amount of angel investors, phenomenal. The amount of VCs investing in Africa have grown rapidly. So look, the future's really, really bright. And the number of companies, as you mentioned a few which we've invested in, a few which we've been unfortunate that we've missed out. But the opportunities are endless. There would be a new amazing company being built every day. And the possibility that even one of our greatest companies on the continent has not even started is even there. So, like a number of people say, well, still at the very, very early stage, it's important to continue to strengthen and build on the gains that have been made. So the ecosystem continues to grow. It's been phenomenal, Tessa. I must say, it has been exciting.
I mean, it's been exciting watching and seeing the growth, seeing the number of exciting startups, seeing the amount of capital actually going into these startups as well. Every day you open the news or log into LinkedIn and you're just wowed by these figures of really worthy startups being invested in. So this is something I wanted to touch upon in terms of what is the process for discovering these startups with investment potential? Is it quite informal? Is it a very analytical approach in terms of crunching and looking at the numbers? What is your process? How do you decide that this is the one, this is where I want to invest or put my money? Okay.
So, I mean, different VCs have different things which they do, but a number of them start with a thesis. The thesis being, what do I invest in? What jurisdiction do I invest in? What sectors do I invest in? Right. So you start off from that point of view. What is it that excites me? Is it fintech? Is it health tech? Is it everything? You start off from there. Once you find, and in most cases, you pick something that you're familiar with, something you're comfortable with, right? That you have a certain understanding, right? From that point on, then you seek out what are the companies, who are the people within this space that are trying to solve the problems that exist within that sector or within that ecosystem. And now, when you think of it that way, the numbers are massive. There are a number of people, but who is good? Who is bad? I mean, there really isn't any bad. Who are the ones in there that we would like to work with? Who are the ones that you think will succeed? You know what I mean? And bearing in mind, you're not the only one looking for these people. There's a list of companies. Now that's where the ecosystem that has developed over time, where the accelerators, the incubators, and the angels and the VCs have come. It's been almost like magic. The partnerships between the ecosystem has been amazing. It's almost as if everyone has opened up their books towards the greater good. So the way we work at Odba, the way we pick is through our pipeline is generated from relationships with a number of incubators, accelerators, angels, and VCs as partners, and we do a lot of groundwork. At the moment, our jurisdiction, we're in London, and we have a satellite office in Lagos. But we plan to open up in Kenya and South Africa, and increase the number of scouts, because you've got to also, in addition to these partnerships, you've got to fold up your shirt and go on ground, as we used to love to say a long time ago, right? Go on ground and meet people, talk to people. So in terms of how we find them is in these ways, right? We meet people, we talk to people, you go after them, you search for them using your ecosystem. Of course, like I said, the game has changed in that the amount of capital going in has now increased. So the founders too, are careful on who they speak to. They want to be sure that you can add value as well as capital. So the terrain has become competitive, which is really good. It's really good for both the investors and the founders. But there's a lot going on within the space, meaning that a number of corporations are building things to ensure that it's easier for founders to grow. So we go out and we find them wherever we find them. We invest in them and we find them. They're all over the place. You can't really say, and that's where some VCs differ. Then you ask the other question, criteria. Some people it's intuition, some people it's numbers. Because if you think about it, in the very early stages, it's an idea and a concept. And if the person hasn't got that much experience, how do you judge? How do I invest in someone that really has never built a company before? Yes, he has some sort of engineering experience, but he has this really burning idea and this desire. How do you decide? Now, a number of, like I said, because we're in the very early stages of VC in Africa, we would all learn. A number of mistakes will be made. Some things would be speculation. Some things would be excitement. Some things will be outright fraud, right? But as the early stages, you do what you can do best. You do as much due diligence as possible. You crunch the numbers. You compare it to competitors in other jurisdictions, the possibility of them being able to achieve their dream, and then you go for it, right? The more investments we do, the better we will get at doing it, because we're a startup. If you think about it, right? We're a startup in investing. Right. So we do have our thesis. We do have things which we look at. There are things there, that we throw out there that we expect these boxes to be ticked, whether it is revenue or not revenue, but there is also that intuition. How do you feel? Do you think that person would do well or not? So with regards to that, it's still being built on the continent generally, right? Because again, we're still at the very early stages.
Thank you for that. You've given us a lovely breakdown of the process of discovering startups. I mentioned that founders in Africa are now very specific or particular about who they take investments from, and they're looking for someone who can add value. So, as an early stage investor, what do you do for your companies? How do you add value? For example, give us a week in the life of an early stage investor. How do you work with your companies?
Different companies require different things, and they're at different stages, right? Different stages, and some founders are more aware or more sophisticated than others. Now, like I mentioned to you, since at the moment we're still an early stage VC company, where we really provide the value is in strategy, right? Of course, we've invested the capital, but it's in strategy. It's sitting down with our companies, and we work with our companies. Like a week, to answer the question more directly, a week in a life of Odba would be, we're sort of like a week in the life of whatever our portfolio companies is, because we are almost like members of the team of the portfolio company.
Okay.
Like that 11th member, and that's what I mean about VC. That's it's up to the company. You can just give money and sit back and hope to God that things go well. That's more like the stock market. But in VC, it's you get dirty with your portfolio companies. You're a member of that team. So with some companies, we are more hands-on than others, because obviously some are doing much better than others and know what needs to be done. So for the ones that are doing really well, I suppose it's that monthly or quarterly catch up to see where they are and to see what they have planned and what we can do to either, whether it's introductions, whether it's a strategy, whether it is extra capital. And for the companies that are fairly new, we do everything. From assisting on them taking on new members of staff, strategy, marketing, growth, everything. We're members of the team. We're members of their team. So we do whatever it is the founders and the founders and the people that run the company require to continuously enable them grow. We're members of staff for these companies. So we're involved in some of them, their day-to-day runnings of the business, planning, executing strategy, coming up and assisting with strategy. And with some of them, we're hands off. We just have the quarterly meeting, because they have a certain momentum and they know exactly what it is they're doing. We also assist in partnerships. We whatever it takes, whatever it takes to ensure that we provide these portfolio companies with the assistance to enable them grow.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I guess effectively as a early stage investor, you become part of the team and you help with whatever it required to enable that company to grow, whether it's strategically, whether it's operationally, whether it's tactically.
Exactly.
One thing you did mention earlier was that in 2021 was a record year for fundraising for African startups. I think approximately $4.9 billion was raised by African startups. Do you expect this trend to continue for a prolonged period of time, or have we seen the peak?
No, not at all. I mean, there's always the possibility of a slight pullback, and the slight pullback will come as a result of things going on everywhere. I expect this to continue. I expect it to continue for reasons why, a good thing doesn't stop when it's good.
Yeah.
I can't see why it wouldn't stop. In the short to medium term, where we could possibly see a pullback is just affairs in other countries, right? So if the American stock market becomes cheaper, of course, it makes more sense to put money in places where they're more comfortable with, right? Or if there's economic or political unrest in Africa, of course, that would reduce the pullback. Or just, global uncertainty, inflation or all these things. Investors might just hold, but that's got nothing to do with the African terrain. It's just the nature of the global economy.
Yes.
But from the African terrain, I mean, there are roads to be built. There's power to be put across the whole continent. Now, we both know what happens when logistics becomes really easy, when it's easy to move around goods and services. At the moment, what we're seeing, the phenomenal growth we're seeing, is in fintech, technology, things that can bypass the logistics that causes the major problems and issue in Africa, right? But going forward, I mean, the amount of problems that needs to be solved are just, we could go on all day. So will the money come in? Of course, it will come in. It will increase considerably. I expect it to be 10 billion this year. We had this Get Funded Africa. The folks at Get Funded Africa did this event a few weeks ago. And this was one of those topics that were discussed with a number of VCs. And they believe so too, that it will grow phenomenally. I mean, the guys from Africa Cabal, I think it is, Maxine, and the guys at Brita Bridges. A number of the reports, as well as the Patek report, the reports are just showing that the interest is just getting going. I think this year, so far in the first quarter of this year, we've already beat what has happened last year. And I tell people the reality is it's not charity. The only reason why money is coming is because they've seen that there's value, right? And once there's value, money chases something of value. So I expect it to continuously rise. Of course, as a result, a certain bubble will be created. It will inflate and it will burst. I don't think anyone should be too scared about that. Just hope that when it bursts, you don't get destroyed. But that's part and parcel of growth. When somewhere is growing, there would be bubbles that would be created. But I cannot see it stopping unless we have a political uncertainty. There have to be a number of things that make the terrain just unworkable. But I see this as the very, very early stages. It's almost like I suppose in the very first 5-6 years when China was growing phenomenally, everyone was thinking, how long can this go on for? Now, considering that they were growing from a position of a massive deficit, we can see how long. So as long as we continue to do what we're supposed to do within the ecosystem and continue to grow, I mean, I do not see a reason why there would be a reduction in the interest. There wouldn't be. I think it will continuously grow to a point where when we get to a certain level of development, then maybe it will start to dwindle. But where we are now, we're coming from -50, if that makes any sense. I don't even think we're on 0. We're still on -10. So very exciting times ahead. Very exciting. Some of the greatest companies have not yet even been formed. So yes, there might be shakes along the way, but I think this year, for example, we'll all double what was brought in last year. So I'm looking at a target of roughly about $10 billion going into different companies on the African continent.
I agree with you 100% that the investment space or trend in Africa will continue for possibly decades, and it will grow considerably. But I believe that we probably need more investors to enter the space as well to continue that trend and continue that growth.
Yes.
So if someone wanted to enter the African startup or investment space, what advice would you give as someone who has entered in as a investment startup? How would they go about entering the space of investing in African startups?
So importantly, you're going with your eyes wide open, right? It's not
Yes.
It's not a lottery, right? It's not a lottery. Yes, we have heard a number of companies have given 20, 30 times return, right? You know, a number of people, angel investors, have invested 25,000, and over the course of 2 years, they've made 750,000, which is phenomenal. Now, it's not the norm. For every one of those, there are 200 that haven't done that. Right. So importantly, one of the first things is that always invest in something you're comfortable with, or you understand to a certain degree, or you have that interest. You know, there's an interest. So just in case you don't make the return, you learn something. Now, I remember saying that to one of my angel investors, and he goes, you know, I don't want to learn anything. I just want to make the return. So when you want to go in, it really depends on how you want to invest. Are you investing as a limited partner? Are you investing as an angel? What amount of time do you want to allocate towards this investment? You know, is it one of those ones where you just want to place the capital, or do you want a bit more where you think you can add expertise to these companies, right? But more importantly, you have to understand that it is riskier than most of other investments. You're tied in for much longer, and there's a very high possibility that you get nothing back. Now, that's just the truth. There's no running away from that, no matter how exciting or how interesting we try to make the sector appear. The reality is it is high risk. That's just the fact of it. It pays very well if you get it right, but there's always a chance that your investment could go to zero. So what I will always advise is just go with things that you are interested in, or partner with companies that have the expertise to really guide you. Because yes, we are all excited because, you know, just the fact that we can contribute in some way, be you an angel investor, someone with $1,000 or $100,000, the fact that you can directly contribute to development of Africa is exciting all of us. You know, it's not the aid; it's now actual business, yes. Right? So we're all in the exciting stage, that formal stage. You know, nobody wants to miss out. Everybody wants to be involved. Now, if you think about it, that is what causes bubbles, right? Because everybody just rushes in without knowing what they're getting into, and they just throw money at things, and then obviously it's going to blow up. So importantly, it's to be aware that it's high risk, to ensure that who you're getting in bed with knows exactly what it is they're doing. And in most cases, let it be something that there is an interest. It's said in almost everywhere, you know, obviously don't invest money that you can't afford to lose. But, you know, most people I know can't afford to lose anything. So you know, I've always wondered what that sentence or that saying, you know, don't invest anything you can't afford to lose, you know. But knowledge is important here. It's not like it's a bit harder than the stock market. Yes, it gives phenomenal returns, but the risk is high. You're investing in a company with maybe not much experience. It's an idea, it's a concept. They might not even have products. They might not have even pulled in a profit. And even if they have, they've just tried it out in a small crowd. So yes, the risk is high, but you can mitigate a number of those things by one, who you partner with, what sort of company you work with, your expertise and your knowledge of the sector. You know, like the general saying, a lack of interest stems from a lack of knowledge. You know, the more you know about something, the more informed your decisions will be. So I would advise for individuals, I would advise things like the African Angel Academy, because they're really good to enlighten you and bring you up to speed with knowledge. And a number of VCs but we offer syndicates. We'll soon be launching rolling funds as well as our first fund. But know what you're getting yourself into. It's important, because for all the phenomenal amounts of money that's coming in, it does differ. The time scale is longer. You're locked in for longer. Not all companies will get to unicorn status or get to $500 million. And even if they do, they might not get there really fast. And even if they do get there, it still does not determine whether they end up being winners. Meaning, at the moment, and rightfully so, at the moment, we're just talking about all the excitement, the positivity, or the upside, to get us going. But there are downsides. Like I said, it is high risk. There is a very high chance that the company does not keep raising. There's a high chance that the capital you invest in goes to zero. Now, like with everything in life, we can deal with mishaps as long as we are aware that there's the possibility of them happening. And when they do happen, we can deal with it better as long as we know that everything was done within our power to ensure we did the best we possibly could. Right? So if all that is followed and you don't achieve the results you want, you can go to sleep well. But if it's a case that you didn't know what you got yourself into, you didn't really assess it, that's where it's really painful, in addition to the capital. So it's just trying to get yourself as knowledgeable as possible. And I assure you, both in Europe, America, and in Africa, there are a number of bodies and ecosystems that have developed to give a wealth of knowledge. On Twitter, for example, you could get a PhD in VC and angel investing.
Very true.
I mean, from the amount of brilliant minds that are out there. I mean, Tessa, it's just really phenomenal. I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. But I'm from, we had this conversation before. I'm from sort of, like, it's weird to say, but the old world, the old financial services world. Before we do things, I mean, to want to raise a fund and to be talking about it on Twitter to everybody and get everybody chip in, and you ask yourself, I mean, it's unheard of. Yes. The last 3 years, what is happening in ecosystems, from tech, from VC, is just phenomenal. If you don't adapt, you will very, very quickly become out of date. So while we are experiencing, and to be fair, we've waited for this for a very, very long time. A very long time. So what I always want to say, especially to ecosystem builders on the African continent, there are a couple of things we have to remember, though, even when this is happening. This phenomenal change is not just happening in Africa; it's happening on every continent in the world, even the much developed continents, right? So as a result, we always have to stay at the top of our game. Yes, we're going to celebrate our wins, but after a while, we're going to stop celebrating, because there's no limit to what we can achieve. We can build the next Apple, Google, or whatever, whatever it is, if we stay audacious. But we've got to continuously look at it from an area of innovation and professionalism. Never, ever again do we ever want to return to the charitable days. We want our worth to be proven in the contents of our mind. What we're able to contribute to global GDP. And I think so far, what has been proven in the last few years from VCs, from angel investors, from founders, it's just been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal. We could not hope for anything more. So the future is very bright. Yes, it's going to have its problems, but it's very, 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 very bright with regards to what we've seen so far.
Amen, I agree. I mean, that's great advice and insight. From a personal point of view, I have a lot of people from the African diaspora who are looking at all these exciting headlines in Africa and are suffering from serious FOMO and are always inquiring about how to invest in startups back home. What advice or message would you give to them as someone who is also from the African diaspora?
I mean, just give them my phone number. I mean, just give them my phone number. Well, at the moment, I'll quickly try and use this to plug. Do forgive me.
No, of course. Go for it. Please do.
At the moment, we're still in stealth mode, right? So we've not even launched our newsletter. But April is going to be a big month for us. We start off with our fundraising, and then there will be a lot more information on our website, right? But we will be offering rolling funds, for smaller investors. We do offer syndicates, and also we're setting up with raising our first fund. So there'll be a number of things that we can provide to different clientele from both institutional, retail, whether you want to do it big or small. So that's us, that's like I said, we'll be opening up. We've got a satellite office in Lagos and an office here, but we'll be taking on a number of people to enable us do this. Like I said, we're still in the very early stages. Although we haven't put $2 million to work, we've not yet raised the fund, which we're in the process of doing. So by all means, we're at the moment, we're on South Moulton Street in Mayfair, and the satellite office is in Ikoyi. So by all means, please send them to me. But say for whatever reason you don't want to, there are a number of places that people can go. There are a number, like I mentioned, there are a number of free courses on angel investing, a number of things to really bring people up to speed with what it entails. Now, the question, I suppose, what you're asking further is pipeline. What do they invest in? All these, everybody in diaspora, everybody around the world, when they're coming across all these really exciting companies, how do they pick who they invest in or what they invest in? I mean, there are, again, exciting companies. I mean, to answer this question, a company called Get Equity, for example, are creating a platform to enable people to invest little bits of money in different companies, right? That further, not only does it allow you to invest very small amounts of money, but it also brings different companies with an explanation of what it is they do to the retail client. You know what I mean? So a lot is out there and a lot is being done to ensure that everybody does get involved. Now, of course, when everybody gets involved, you want to be, the sector is stronger the more people understand and they know. So how do they, is they need to, join companies that can guide them, companies like Odban. There are a number of phenomenal companies out there, but there's a lot now. It's not like it was 3 to 5 years ago. Now there are a number of venture capitalist firms that do offer syndicates, that do offer angel investing. There are a number of, like I've mentioned a couple of times, because I did use African Angel Academy. They do a number of things. They also do syndicates where they introduce investment opportunities. It's always nicer when you invest as a group, because a number of the things you're not familiar with, or a number of the things where you don't have expertise, can be covered by other angels or other people. But it's changed considerably. All you need to do is, how do I invest in African startups on Google? And the list will be enormous. But if after all that is done, or even before all that is done, Tessa, just to be sure, I know you have it, but I'll send you my mobile number again and my email address again.
Fantastic.
So if there's anyone, that is looking for brilliant companies to invest in on the African continent, or companies based in the US or the UK, please contact us. And if we're not able to place you, we'll pass you along to one of our partner VCs or angels. You'll be in very good hands with ourselves. So all they need is odba.vc. So I'll stop now, man, because I would go hard.
Brilliant. I'll ensure that everyone gets that information. Thank you for that amazing information regarding some of the new innovative ways that people can invest. So if we kind of look at that in terms of new ways people can invest and the way the market is going or moving towards, what trends in the African investment space are you currently excited about?
I'm excited about a number of things. So we started off in payments, right? Because payments was the simple one, low-hanging fruit. Payments, then banking would come, and insurance, right? Necessities are the things that would do well, meaning that things that I find exciting might not be scalable, although they might be profitable. But at the moment, I find fintech to be very exciting, right? And it's, like I said, it's because we're coming from a position of minus 50.
Yes.
So fintech, it's the fastest, it's very easy to monitor, client acquisition, provide them with a service, so I find fintech very interesting. EdTech, I've always found interesting, because if the economy is going to grow, we have to be educated better. We need to be more aware. And there are a number of EdTech companies out there that I think would do very, very well as a result. Health tech is important. It's one of the major issues on the continent. So again, companies that can provide that would do really well. Now, the other ones which I love, right? Web3, for example. What comes next? Really excited. That's going to be really, really, really exciting. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Right? I know a number of our partner VCs are doing a lot of work in there. And, at the moment, that's where we're getting our pipeline from. But as we build up our capacity, these are the sectors that are interested. So if you really look at it, when you look at the continent and you say, what do we need to grow? What do we need to move along faster? The very first thing is mindset change, right? The way we look at things and view things has to change. That's where the education comes in. To sustain our mindset change, importantly, we need to have good health. At the moment, the health system is dilapidated, and which can be changed. Then it's managing our money better, right? To increase our money or manage our money better. Hence, the fintech. The final one in the puzzle, which again is being dealt with, is agriculture and power. Now for those ones, I know agriculture is receiving a lot of investment, but it's not our core expertise at the moment. So we're staying away. But not meaning not to answer the question, the opportunities are enormous. For ourselves, we will stick to fintech, edtech, health tech, and Web 3.0. But wherever you look, there's an opportunity. Right? But for us, it's fintech, health tech, edtech, and Web 3.0.
So I guess the message there is there's too many opportunities and trends in Africa to be excited about.
I'm always careful when I say that, because when you give people an abundance of choice, they end up doing nothing. Right? That's the truth. Right?
Very much so, in all ways of life.
Exactly. They end up doing nothing. So I always try my very best. When they say, well, what is working there? I want to say everything. There's an opportunity everywhere. You just say what it is you want to do. Now, when you do that, the person is lost. The person doesn't know where to go. At the moment, fintech is the one that's pulling in all the capital. Majority of all this investment money we're talking about, that 4 billion, I think a good 60 or 70% of it would have gone towards fintech. Like fintech is still the one pulling the way forward, and there'll be a number of other things. At the moment, it's all still tech-empowered opportunities, right? But going forward, there will be a number of, there are so many businesses in Africa that just need, old-fashioned VC would also boost other sectors, right? But at the moment, it's really things that can be changed using technology because it's cheaper, easier to manage, right? So it's a number of things using technology, things that are not particularly strong on, power, logistics, so that's very important, but technology, which is why we're seeing this jump in fintech. But we expect, like I said, the more brilliant minds come in, more interest and more capital will be attracted to things. So I will still stick with the fintech as the very safe option. Us at Odba, we like fintech, health tech, edtech, and Web 3.0. But we do think that more interest. There will be more VCs and more investors that would just stick to something that they like or they have an expertise in. And that's how we would see other sectors growing, apart from the exciting ones that I have mentioned.
Thank you for that. My background is in supply chain and international trade, so that's an area which I'm excited to see how it develops within the African startup space.
It's going to be phenomenal.
Yes.
It's going to be something else.
Maybe we can have a conversation about that another time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to that, yes. Because if you think about it, we get that sector right, then it's almost as if we build our foundations and we really solidify our foundations. 100%. And this is the exciting thing. The reality is at the moment, our foundations aren't strong on the continent. Maybe some countries are stronger than others, but the foundations aren't strong. Once the foundations are strong, it provides a springboard for us to grow and, to levels that are unbelievable. What I mean by that is once there's power and infrastructure, oh my goodness. Yes. I didn't think in my lifetime, I'm not saying I'm sure there are other things, but, to see what things like, and I don't mean to go off, but it's a good example of what is possible. When I look at people like David or Burna Boy or Wizkid and what these chaps are doing, right? In real time, that is what is possible.
That's what is possible.
Right? That's what is possible. What the boys at Flutterwave, Chipper, Kuda, 54 Gene, what they've shown is what is possible. Do you understand what I mean? Against all odds. Nobody really backed or believed them. They did it, swimming against the tide. They showed us what is possible. Now imagine what people can do when everybody backs you, when everybody's rooting for you, when the climate is there. When a startup in Africa gets the sort of support that the UK government or the US government gives a startup in America or Britain. When a startup in Africa, when the taxman, our tax bodies looks at them as job employment, that looks at how can we make you expand further, it's going to be a completely different game. When the HNI on the African continent is looking around, right, to say, who can I give my money to today? When he looks at his son or his daughter in the morning and saying, how come you haven't gone to start something I can give your money to, right? Meaning that, no, I am telling you that we are operating at -50. And this is what we have seen. This is what, so which is why we will forever be, grateful to some of them. I call them legends, heroes that have paved the way, that have made us see what is possible. Like I've mentioned a number of these companies, a number of people that operate within the ecosystem, the early guys, the eco VCs, the ingressives, the ventures, the Future Africa, all the guys that have really, it's audacity that they've used to open up everyone's eyes. And the guys that have brought in everyone to angel investing, who have tirelessly, put their money where their mouth is, that they are doing exactly that thing that Gandhi has said, be the change you want to see. They've pushed,
yes.
They've pushed forward against all odds, all insults, right? And now, because of what they've done, people now see the sector and the continent in a very, very different light. I say all the time, right? There's something we say in Yoruba, our Egbons. Egbons is our older ones, the ones that have come before us, that have contributed to our growth. In my case, some of the, the really great guys that are running, United Capital, Chapel Hills, all the guys that have, 10, 12 years ahead of us. We understand that it's just a different time. There's nothing new under the sun. Every single last thing that is being done, we're doing today, they did it 15, 20 years ago when they were in their 30s, when they created all these fantastic banks, the United Capitals, the Access Banks of this world, the Zenith and the GTBs. They were innovative young people, and see what they have done 15 years later, right? I remember when, GTB and Access Bank were first raising their capital. The stories of those very early businessmen, right? I know for GTB, for example, those CEOs there broke out to form Access Bank, Sterling Bank, that's a group of 6 or 7 people, did something truly phenomenal. 15 years later, these banks are across the continent, stronger than they've ever been. And remember, they came at the time to disrupt a number of banks that were within the space, right? So I'm looking at it now, and I'm looking forward 15 years from today. And all I see is, a very, very powerful economy of companies that have been built by young, innovative people that are not scarred with a number of the things of the past or the limitations that a number of things that have happened before, but only see the future, only see how they can improve things. And when you look at it from that point of view, you look at what the gentlemen and the ladies that created all those other companies and where those companies are today, the time scale in which the new sets, the new clique are creating these companies, and not just the time set, the value that these new entrepreneurs are creating. It can only be exciting for 15. As long as all things being equal, we keep the political stability. Oh, there's no stopping. There's no stopping anyone with regards to what is possible. Audacity has been unleashed. The African innovator has become audacious. He's not scared no more. His mind is not bounded by limits. So once that happens, you're going to see the very, very best of what they're possible, what they're capable of. And like I've said, if you can see what has happened in entertainment, a number of people will say, well, that's entertainment. Well, like I've mentioned, Flutterwave, Paystack, and Kuda, and a few of them has shown you what is possible. So I would advise everyone get a massive, massive bowl of popcorn and enjoy the ride. And enjoy the ride. It's going to be...
Sit back and enjoy the ride.
Yes, if you can, don't sit on the sidelines. Jump in. Invest, advise, get involved. We've always wanted this. We've wanted to see the great continent grow. We've wanted to see it expand, but we've always wondered how. We've hoped that governments would get their act together. We've hoped that a number of things that hinder our growth would change. But what we've done is we've just always hoped. As we know, hope is not a strategy. Somewhere along the line, some people have believed in a number of young people, and they've invested. And in a very short space of time, oh my goodness. Now, I tell most of the founders I invest in, and I tell it to myself, that it's no shot to all the guys that have come before us, because we stand on their shoulders, and they, we need them to go further. So it's not a fight against the old school and the new school, right? The new school needs the old school. We stand on the shoulders of the old school to go further. We are not going to, we're not going to criticize continuously. Our job is to convince them. When they tell, I speak to a number of LPs, I had one, I was speaking to an LP, a similar experience in Ghana and in Lagos a few weeks ago, sat down with an LP, and he's there looking at me, and he's telling me, you want me to give that guy $2 million, never done anything, jeans, shredded jeans, T-shirts, you know what I mean? You want me to give that guy $2 million, he's saying that he's going to do this, he's going to do that. The guy goes further. Do you know how long it took me to even get access to $10,000, $20,000, which is true, right? That's what he's grown up with, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're telling him that give this company 1 million and in 3 years' time it can be worth 20 million. It's a mental block. He doesn't mean to be rude. He doesn't mean to be dismissive. He doesn't mean to tell you that you guys haven't got the slightest idea. He doesn't mean to, right? A lack of interest stems from a lack of knowledge. So the same way we have built companies, right, to change the way people, consumer or retail behavior is, it's the same way a number of VCs and all of us need to convince our HNIs. We can't do this without them. If it is done without them, like I said, it will be Africa will be owned by foreigners, which I have no problem with, but, we want everybody to share in the prosperity of the great continent. So I think once we can bring our governments and our HNIs to firmly believe, not just in their capital, but they then start backing these founders with expertise. Oh my goodness. Then, you would understand when we say that we're still at minus 50, right? So just think of, it will be difficult, but all of a sudden, when you watch Black Panther and you see how Wakanda is displayed, you can begin to see how it is possible if we continue to do what is being done in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia. Everybody is doing their own thing in there, and then we come together and we innovate. The strong ones will survive, the weak ones will be either sold or they would fail, and we'll just continuously grow. But when you look back, when we look back within our lifetime, Tessa, it would be a distant memory, right? Our time is now. The opportunities are clear. Another way of looking at it is the way a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old handles an iPad, right? You've seen this.
Yes.
You leave them for 20, 30 minutes, right? And they are phenomenal at it. That is what our great minds on the African continent would be. All we need to do is empower them, guide them, and make it about business, because it's not charity. We don't want charity. Make it about business. The skills are there. In fact, we're also experiencing this where a number of our professionals are actually leaving, because obviously they're being paid more abroad. That was, we should expect that to happen. But we will continue to, increase the amounts of engineers, continue to work on the ecosystem, because it's so far from the end product. We're going to have a number of issues, but so far, oh, so good. definitely so far so good. And it, like I said, it has been a result of a number of people that have done phenomenal things. I mean, I remember a long time ago in somewhere, some events in Liverpool Street, I think, a long time ago. I think this would have been 2013. When I think about 2013, I remember being at the table where Tommy Davis was, talking about angel investing. Very small, 13 of us, To think 9 years later, what has happened
since then, yes.
Since then, it's just phenomenal. It really is. No matter how you look at it, it's inspiring. It's nice to hear these sorts of stories about our great continent rather than it to be something else. It's nice to hear capabilities being developed. So I'm really, really, as you can tell, I'm really excited. I'm hoping from an Odber's point of view, we'll just continuously grow, continuously raise more and more capital to ensure that we're best positioned to help our portfolio companies become amazing.
You've mentioned that possibility opens up opportunities for the future, and also beautifully detailed where you see Africa in 5 years' time from a startup investment perspective. So if we go closer to home, from a more personal point of view, where do you see yourself and Odber in 5 years' time?
Well, I see us much stronger than we are now. 5 years is a long time, so I'm hoping by then we'll probably be on fund 4 or 5 or 6. 5 years, fingers crossed, would have raised close to $500 million over those funds and would have invested in a number of phenomenal companies, a number of them unicorns, we hope. We just think we'll continuously grow. We've got really big dreams and aspirations. We've got really big dreams. We plan to be around for the next 100 years. So forgive us if we move slowly. We want to move right. But we want to be one of the great investment companies that has contributed to not only the growth of phenomenal companies in Africa, because like I mentioned before, this technology revolution is not just happening on the African continent, it's happening on every continent on the capital. So in years to come, we want to be one of the venture capitalist companies that has made a difference to the portfolio companies that we serve and have given a decent return to our investors and LPs that have believed in us. For me, I would continuously work within the space, to continuously promote investments, partnerships, and do all the other things that we find interesting. But we think it's going to be very exciting. Like I said in the early stages of the podcast, to go from a place where I'm attending every meeting, almost trying to describe where Lagos is and talking about Africa, telling you how Nairobi is different from Kinshasa, to a place now where these same people that were saying these things 2 years ago are telling me the best place to go for a drink in Lagos or in Nairobi. Oh, it's just powerful, right? So the interest has changed, right? Now I'm not going out there breaking my neck. I have similar minds. So it's now like the same thing we want to do to the HNIs and to our governments. It's the same thing we want to do to the investors coming in. We want to enlighten them, partner, and build our continent together. Also, the thing that you would see happening, because you've seen it in a very short space of time with the audacity of the founders and the VCs that have gone already. We will become so bold that they will start to take our strategies to go and build great companies outside. That we are not always going to superimpose what has worked there. Ndubisi, Dr. Ndubisi did this thing with Harvard Business School. I think it was the Igbo strategy in how they build businesses, right? Which is transferable, where one person gets another person, empowers him, and then empowers another person.
Yes.
And this is something that was taught at Harvard Business School recently. Very, very nice. I mean, not different from a number of things they do there, but that's my point. That we have great stories. We're a rich culture with very intelligent people. We've got a number of plans and ideas that could go into different places and improve. In healthcare, for example, there are a number of things that we will contribute. So I see our rise as a continent the same way we saw the rise of Asia as a continent. I see the rise on some countries in Africa, the same way we saw the rise some other countries. It's going to be tough, but I think we've got over the worst. And the worst was just convincing people to look at Africa. Now they are looking at Africa, and it took a lot to get them. So we're just going to continue to, shine what the opportunities are. We're not going to avoid the difficulties because they do exist. We're not going to be delusional as to that effect. But if we could operate in that terrain 15 years ago, operating in it now is nothing. So we're just going to keep going forward, keep progressing as we continue to break boundaries. So fingers crossed, 5 years from today, when we are having this conversation, Tessa, I'll be telling you that maybe 10 or 11 of our companies have become unicorns. They've provided this amount of jobs. They have done this and changed the world in this way. And we have a number of LPs that have benefited from it. That's what we're hoping the conversation would be in 5 years. So, like I said, as we love to say in this founder startup industry, it's still day one. Yes. It's still very much a day one. We're really excited with what has gone so far and what is to come within the ecosystem.
Fantastic. Amen to that. I think you've given a very realistic and achievable vision in terms of where you see Africa and yourself in Oddbit in 5 years' time. Because I think with the success that you've had so far, that is very achievable.
Well, not even me. I mean, I'll be careful when I say the success, because we're just on the road, not success. But I mean, seeing what others have done has been phenomenal. Yes. Seeing what we, like you said, yes, what we have put in place has been phenomenal. What we've seen in other jurisdictions too, gives us hope. And like I say, when you sit down with a number of these founders and you have conversations with them, I mean, it's unbelievable, Tessa. I'm not just saying this. I'm not saying it for the sake of saying it. We're made to believe that, what do kids know? And in Africa, anybody under the age of 30 or 35 is a kid. What does he know? We like to remind them, and which is what we do a lot. We like to remind every single last one of them, especially in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that, you keep calling us kids. All of you went into presidency and ministers at the age of 25, 27, and 30. You're all babies when you ruled our countries in the 60s, right? And we know what happened then. It was a very exciting time in the early days. So I think we're there now, right? We just need to not get carried away in the excitement and the small wins. What this has shown is proof of concept, in my opinion. It's proof of concept that they're capable and the terrain, can be worked on. So we just forge ahead with more audacity, And, as they say, knock, the door shall be opened. You ask and you shall receive. We are coming. And then thousands of us coming. And nobody should get worried. We are coming to add value to the world. We're not coming as charity. We're coming to add value to the world. So it's a very exciting time. And to be involved in Africa, to be involved in startups, investments generally.
I agree. Exciting times ahead.
Quote of the week.
As people, we often have quotes, mantras, or even as Africans, African proverbs or affirmations that keep us going when times are good or when times are challenging. Do you have one that you can share with us today?
There's one I really like. Different people say it in different ways. It's not African, but I'm sure, there's a lot of it in there that reminds me of a number of African proverbs. It's a Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt one. And in its fullness, I think it sounds something like this. And I think that's, you would see what I mean by audacity. It sounds along the lines of, it's far better to dare mighty achievements than to live your life in the gray twilight that neither victory nor defeat, right? Meaning that when I'm using it in the African term, it's one life. There's no need for us to be ordinary, although there's nothing wrong in being ordinary, right? But let's go for it. It's far better to dare mighty triumphs, although checkered, by things that can stop us from achieving great things, right? It's the time to just do, it's taking that leap of faith now. The door will be opened. It's not like before where the door was permanently locked. Take that leap of faith. And if we do, I think everything will be fine, and we'll continuously move towards this. I'm just going to hope that my mom doesn't get to read this, because she's going to see of all the African proverbs I told you, but it's Theodore Roosevelt that you're quoting. Of all the ones under the tree, on top of the tree, it's Roosevelt you're quoted, But yes, that is it. Everything is possible. And as long as we continue as we have, it really is an exciting time to be alive. I'll be honest. It's really an exciting time to be an investor that invests on the African continent, or an investor that invests in innovative minds. It's an exciting time, to be part of an ecosystem that is so sharing and empowering. It's just a really great time to be alive. Like I said, I've done Africa for the last 15, 20 years, built a number of companies, worked on a number of things. But I tell you, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect it to be this full of energy, this amount of excitement. And like I said, it's still the very early stages. So I'm really excited, or maybe I'll say it in Yoruba, but I suppose the other one, which she said, which I translated, just be all you can possibly be. Have no fear. Just be all you can be. And that will be enough. All you can be will be enough.
Amen.
So we're excited. We're excited. Really excited.
I don't think I could have closed our conversation in a better way. It's been an amazing conversation, one that has delivered immense value and insight to myself, and I'm sure the listeners of the podcast. So thank you for dropping by. I know it's taken us a while to organize this, but we both have very busy schedules, but we've managed to come together and put together a wonderful episode of the Unlocking Africa podcast. So once again, Gbite, thank you for your time.
Just before I go out, another place that could help with all these things is I'm a member of an organization called NISM, which is an organization of professionals in the city of London. It's called Nigerians in the Square now, but NISM, it's open to a number of us. And also for guidance on how to explore the terrain. That is also a very good point for people to get information. But Tessa, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm extremely grateful, and I look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. You take very good care of yourself, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you. We'll speak soon. Thank you to everyone who has listened and stayed tuned to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, or tell a friend about it. You can also rate, review us in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast. Thank you, and see you next week for the Unlocking Africa podcast.